What is up, BookTube? It's Monty, and I'm here today due to my worst books of 2019. Just a quick disclaimer, it is currently the middle of the winter, so the heat in the background might kick on at some point. I'm not going to turn my heat off because I don't want to freeze any more than I already am. So that might happen. I'm also not doing, I'm putting on some lotion, but I'm also not going to have an exhaustive list here. That's what I was trying to get to. I'm going to talk about two books because, much like my recent video, I think it was my 2019 reflection video, I'll leave that linked down below in my description. I don't like this idea. I know that everyone does like a worst of the year list, and it's all very tongue-in-cheek, but I'm going to be talking about books that I actually had significant issues with in terms of writing and in terms of... Ooh, I have stuff in my hair. Love that. In terms of like the writing and like actual that I think that make them not quality books. And because I am doing that, I didn't want to have like a giant list. This video's already going to be long enough as it is. So, talking about two things. In the cards up above, I think they're actually on this side, up here in the cards, I'm going to leave a link to 5 other book reviews that I did this year, partially because I'm proud of those reviews, and partially because those are also books that I didn't like this year, and I go into a lot of explanation in those reviews about why I didn't appreciate those as much as some other things. So I'm going to talk about 2 here that I don't have standalone videos for. I felt that this was the most appropriate venue. And the first one I actually read first, and that was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was sent to me for my bookish Valentine during the Valentine's readathon that was hosted by Chapter Kate, and somebody else. I know that they didn't run it by themselves, but I'll leave down below, I'll leave the link to the Twitter and Kate's YouTube channel. Before I went into this, I thought I was going to love it, like everyone else and their mother loved it. And then I didn't. So down in the description box, you will also find my GOODREADS review in case you don't want spoilers. You just want to see what I think are the worst books. Yeah, we're going to talk about this for a while. So if you don't want spoilers, there are, like I said, that GOODREADS review down below. Just a basic premise, if you've somehow escaped hearing about The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It takes place mainly in like the 50s and 60s, and it chronicles the life of Evelyn Hugo. I think her name was Evelyn like Herrera before she rebranded to Evelyn Hugo. That could just me being a racist and assuming something that isn't true. I'm not going to look through here, but it chronicles Evelyn Hugo, who was born in New York to some Cuban parents, and she wanted to become a famous actress, and it chronicles her life and her rise to fame. In terms of what I liked about this, I like the fact that you have like a 90-year-old bisexual Cuban American. That's kind of where it ends for me. I didn't like just about anything else that this did. I've said this in a number of videos, but I think my main issue with this book is that Taylor Jenkins Reid just didn't talk about the things I think you need to talk about in this story. So, I mean, she glazes over it. So, when Evelyn first gets to Hollywood, she has a lot of trouble because she is a tan woman in 1950s America, and that is not the aesthetic that we want. You know, you want that milky white skin, you want that, like, nice white name. Like, you don't want an Evelyn Herrera, you want a Judy Garland. And here comes the heat. Yep, there it is, sorry. But, she kind of, in her first couple of years, she has to struggle with the fact that she doesn't get cast in these white roles. But almost overnight, not overnight, but I don't even say suddenly, but she does sort of play into this spicy white woman, like exotic white, like a Kim Kardashian and Ariana Grande situation where it's not a like, oh, she's not, she's a person of color. It's like she's a white woman, and she just plays this role as a white woman for decades of her life. And there are, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I don't think that you shouldn't pass if you can, but I don't think that Taylor Jenkins Reid really explored that the way that she could have, because there were moments where part of the story is that her true love is none of her 7 husbands, but this woman, I think her name, I don't even know what her name was. I want to say it was like Celia. Yes, Celia. Her true love in this book is named Celia, who was like her co-star and who was like a young ingenue. I think she's like a couple years younger than Evelyn. But Celia was so racist, because Celia is a white woman, and there were times where Celia would be like, oh, you're so dark, you shouldn't have blonde hair, but you pull off blonde hair even though you're darky. And I'm just sitting here like, you're falling in love with this woman who was constantly like coming for your ethnicity. And there were moments I think that Evelyn could have self-reflected and been like, oh my goodness, like I have lost touch with who I am. But she doesn't have that moment until like 3/4 of the way through the book, when her maid is speaking in Spanish behind her back because apparently Evelyn is not a good boss, and Evelyn gets super offended that the maid doesn't know that she speaks Spanish. And then you get this montage of Evelyn Hugo in Spain, because her career is kind of waning because she's an older actress, and so obviously the roles aren't there like they used to be. And she's in Spain making tortillas, and that's her reconnecting with her Cuban roots. But I could have gotten past all of that because I'm not a Cuban American person. I'm not one to judge on that. It didn't work for me, so I would have downgraded it just for that. But it was perfectly fine. What killed this book, and I think what bothers me the most, is to be fair, we don't talk about this book at all. To be fair, I have not gone out of my way to watch people's reviews. But I feel like it doesn't get mentioned as much, is what happens to Monique's father. So, one of Evelyn's husbands, I think his name was like Henry Cameron, was a gay man. And he and Evelyn had this arrangement, and they had been like longtime friends by the time they were married, and they had this arrangement where Evelyn was seeing Celia, and Henry had like I think he was seeing Celia's husband, but at one point in time, Henry was seeing this black man, and Henry got into a car accident, and I think the black man died. I forget what Monique's father's name was. He's just a black man to me. He died. And Henry Cameron and I think Evelyn Hugo conspired to frame the black man. So I don't remember if Henry Cameron, I don't know how much of this is in focus, how much isn't in focus, I apologize. This is a hot mess of a video. I don't remember if Henry went to get Evelyn or Evelyn was also in the vehicle, but for whatever reason they conspired to pull this black man from the passenger seat into the driver's seat. And so he was blamed for not only driving drunk, but I think there was another, like the other vehicle they hit, the person also died. And so at the end of this book, you have Monique. And Monique is a whole other can of worms who refused to identify as a black woman. She is a biracial woman. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know, no half black, half white person who's out here like, don't call me black, I'm biracial, that I fuck with. Like, I don't have time for that kind of, I don't have time for that energy in my life. So Monique was a character I didn't fuck with at all. But then you had Monique out here being a black person, my bad, a biracial person, who had never met a black person before, even though we know her father was black and she knew her father. But after her father died, I guess her white mother was just like, you can't see those darkies no more, and just had her daughter in isolation from the rest of her father's family. Because the only time Monique ever saw a black person was when she went to school. And so you find out that the person that Henry Cameron was sleeping with was Monique's father. And that's why Evelyn has granted Monique this interview, because after all of these years, she feels guilty, and this is her way of making it up to Monique by giving her this like career-making scoop, because Monique's this low-level reporter and Evelyn Hugo is this legend, and getting to write this article could really make her career. And all of that was just the single-handed most disgusting thing that I had ever read in a book. Like, you killed this man. Like, the whole story revolves around the death of a black man. The entire book. not only a black man, but a gay black man, or at least a bisexual black man, because it's very clear in the text that he still cared for his white wife. Like, it just was this, or, y'all, this book, when I had to read that, and then I have to sit here and watch people talk about how this is their favorite book of all time because they like Evelyn Hugo. They're, like I said, the only radical thing about Evelyn Hugo is that she is a bisexual Cuban-American woman in her, like, she's an elder, that is in a book. Like, there are very few characters that fit just that, but all of Evelyn Hugo's other personality traits you can literally find in millions of other characters. Evelyn Hugo is a character that I like. I liked her as a character. Her voice was what got, like, I don't say got me through it, but it was what propelled me to finish this story because it was at least enjoyable. Like, it was nice to read. But there are so many characters, like, just like on a personality level that are like Evelyn Hugo, that I'm just kind of like, you just need to own up to the fact that this book is like, it's not it. It's just not it for me. I'm sorry. I'm not even sorry it's not it for me. And it's not that I don't think Taylor Jenkins Reid is a bad author, because as we all know, I later went on to read Daisy Jones and the Six, and I was shook because that book was everything for me. Although, again, there are some awkward race things in that book that we could talk about. We could have that discussion. But this one, I just don't think that the nuance was there. I don't think that the execution was there. And at the end of the day, I don't like it. The only reason I still have that book, one moment, is because it's signed and personalized. I mean, we could talk about how Monty is spelled incorrectly, but, you know, elementary school Monty is fine with this spelling, so we don't go that hard. But this is, like, the fact that it's signed is literally the only reason I didn't get rid of it. And the only reason that it's signed is because I owned it, and I was already going to be at the Ripped Bodice, and it seemed silly to not get it signed. So, this book is never leaving my collection, but this is easily one of my least favorite reads of 2019. Not for me. The other book that I want to talk about, I don't own. Or I take it back. I own it, but I'm pretty sure I left it in the wilderness when I was there in September. So I'm just not gonna see it until I go back to the wilderness in June. So there'll be a picture, we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna be talking about The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Now, originally, I did not want to review this because I didn't want the literary fiction dude bros to come for me. I just didn't need that in my life, and I felt that Heather's video, I can't make a video without talking about Heather, apparently. But I feel like her review just summed up everything that I needed to say, and it's funny, and it's just, but we're here. And since we're talking about books that I think are the worst books that I read this year that I don't have videos for, The Secret History, we have to talk about it. So, if you don't know, The Secret History was published in, I think, 1992 by Donna Tartt, and it's the dark academia story of a group of Greek students at a liberal arts university in, like, Vermont. I think it's actually, is it New Hampshire? I don't know. It's one of the two. It's probably Vermont. So these Greek students at this liberal arts university, and one of their classmates is murdered, and it's kind of like the tale of how we got to there. And it's the most boring tale of how we got to there, because there are interesting elements that happen that are at play in the narrative, right? But because our narrator, Richard, we're gonna get to Richard. Richard was probably the worst part of this whole book. Because Richard is not involved in the interesting elements, we don't get to see any of them. So let's talk about Richard. Richard Papin, however you fucking say his name, is a Californian, which you think that I would appreciate. But Richard Papin is single-handedly, I think, the most subtle white supremacist I have ever read. And that's not just because, you know, he's a classicist and he thinks that the Greeks are, you know, the epitome of everything, which, I mean, questionable, but, you know, go for it, sir. What made me, in retrospect, consider that Richard is a white supremacist is Richard is from California. He lives, I think, in, like, San Jose, just outside of there. And the first part of the novel, he's not even at the liberal arts university. He's still in California. And he just describes California as the series of like mini malls and tech startups and like flat land and, well, not flat land, but like just this barren wasteland of class. Which I'm a California transplant. I was not born here. But even I am aware that there is history in California, like you couldn't find it. But to Richard, the only place in America that has any kind of sense of history is New England. Because New England is where, I guess, the country was founded, and so that's where all the history is, and that's why it's better, and he just longs to be on the East Coast. And so after 2 years at his little rinky-dink community college studying Greek, he decides that he's going to transfer to this liberal arts university that he got like a letter in the mail from in his senior year of high school like 3 years ago. And he's going to go out and he's going to do this even though he has no money, and his parents are like comically abusive. I say comically because like they're just so not a factor. He's on the East Coast alone at this point, right? And so for the first little, I don't know, like 2 weeks at his little school is like just him not having a circle of friends, trying to get into the Greek class that he can't get into for whatever reason because the school is stupid. But finally, he gets into the Greek class, but even then, like, these people are not friends. Like, these people do not befriend him, like, at all. They're very much non-entities. He makes friends with one of them. What the other dude's name one, couldn't tell you. He is very much the ringleader of the murder that takes place. One of them is vaguely a homosexual, like, hinted at and, like, implied to be. And it's like used as blackmail against him, and Richard has a crush on like the only girl in the group because of course he does. He just wants to fuck her, but I don't think I think he does actually. But then there's also like this random incest plot line where she's fucking her twin brother because of course she is. Like the story is stupid. It's just stupid. Just like literally there is no depth to anything that happens in this. And I think what really bothers me is people call it a Greek tragedy and they call it like a satire, but like Donna's Hart has no opinion about anything that's happening here. Like these are just plainly awful people who believe themselves to be so intelligent that they're above just like normal facts, like we went to the fucking moon. Like nothing in this felt like a commentary on anything. It just felt like a bunch of plainly evil, boring people doing plainly evil, boring things. And I think what really killed me is spoiler. At this point, I think you knew there were going to be spoilers, but the character that dies, Bunny, who was obviously the most racist, misogynistic, just like terrible, homophobic person that exists in the novel, was also the most interesting. Like, when Bunny showed up, I was annoyed, but also just very happy because it worked for me. Like, he at least breathed life into this story that was dead, and when he was gone, I was just kind of like, this is stupid. And then I think the ringleader dude eventually, like, he killed himself, and I think you were meant to be sad. But then there was also, like, after his murder, like, Richard started having some homoerotic feelings for him, and it was, like, vaguely implied that he had a crush on the dude. And I was like, that just kind of came out of nowhere, but okay, we can go there. And, like, the twins ran off, and, like, their friend group disintegrated. Like, it was all very just stupid. And the fact that it's so slowly paced was just... It was, like, there was a part in the... And I think what really killed me is that it's really frustrating being in the head of Richard, because Richard is, like, the single most proud poor person I've ever fucking read about. Like, there's a moment after he gets to school, and it's become, you know, the winter time, right? And so he refuses to go home because his parents don't love him or whatever. He doesn't want to ask any of his newfound friends to stay in any of their vacated apartments as they go around the world doing their things. So he, like, sleeps out in the middle of fucking nowhere in this shed with no roof and gets pneumonia. And I'm just sitting here like, this is so dumb. Like, everything this man did was dumb. This man didn't have a smart bone in his body. And so the fact that they got away with it was just dumb. It was literally dumb. I think that if you want to get these like secret history vibes, you could really just watch the first season of How to Get Away with Murder. Viola Davis is a much more interesting professor than their Greek professor. Their Greek professor was such a non-entity and was like, he dipped out of town like at the first sound of like murder. Like that little boy died. I mean, he wasn't really a little boy. He was like 20 something, but that kid died. Bunny died. And the history, like his little Greek ass, he just ran for the hills. He went to go tutor somebody privately. Like, if you want this same dynamic, just watch that. Just go watch that. One, it's actually entertaining. There's some great acting, and there's an actual coherent storyline. But here, it was shit. It was just shit. I cannot think of a single good thing that Donna Tartt did in The Secret History. I cannot think about a single thing that is enjoyable about that book. Not a single fucking thing. I don't know how it took over the hearts and minds of the bookish community. I don't know how it launched Donna Tartt's writing career. I don't know how people want that book. I don't. I think there are some really good additions. I did come across like a transparency cover at a Goodwill, and not picking it up is still one of my life's biggest regrets, I think, because it was like $2. But at the end of the day, the story that would have been in that book was garbage. And I'm not mad that I don't own a garbage story. So in that respect, I'm kind of happy I didn't waste my $3 on it. But those are the two worst books of 2019 that I don't already have videos for. Like I said earlier, up in the cards you will find links to 5 other videos. I haven't decided which books I'm going to include just yet, so they'll be a surprise to me and to you. And then of course, like I said, down below there'll be links to everything I said there'll be links to. But yeah, thanks for watching this. Thanks for sitting through it. If you made it all the way to the end, you're the MVP. I don't deserve you in my life. I appreciate you. Leave your favorite emoji in the comments. If you liked what you saw here and you want to see more, there's a subscribe button. You can like the video, you can dislike the video, do all those fun YouTube-y things. And I'll see you guys here in my next video, which I think is going to be my favorite reads of the year. But until then, and until next time, bye.